You're listening to the KORN Sports Podcast. I'm Travis Kriens, joined with every week here from the Mitchell Republic, Landon, Dierks, and Marcus Traxler. Back from Rapid City, recapping high school basketball. Winter sports are done, basketball is done, and we kind of start with a breaking news story here with SDSU, Marcus. But busy week, and we're back at it. This transition week of there's not much going on this week here on the local scene besides some baseball and softball, but a chance to kind of step back and kind of look at the year that was.
If you like indoor track and all-state basketball, this is your week to learn about the 3-class shootout on Saturday. Mm-hmm. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty quiet. Coaching carousel always running this time of year, and that's probably one of the bigger things we're going to talk about. And then, back from Rapid City, we read about some crime. We got out of town just in time, so that's probably for the best.
We did. We'll touch on Rapid City and the Mitchell Colonels and then the rest of the state tournaments. But as we tape here on a Thursday morning, the 27th of March, looks like Eric Henderson, South Dakota State men's basketball coach, headed to Drake. Drake's coach goes to Iowa, so that leaves an opening there. And been kind of bandied about the past couple days that he was on that list, and it appears that he is the guy. It's interesting how quick all of this really develops. It's like, we've heard of, guys, they're still in the tournament, and it's, Minnesota, NC State, they already have their guys. They're just waiting for those team seasons to come to an end, and within a day or two, these decisions are made. So Eric Henderson headed to Drake, and now that leaves South Dakota State with an opening here. Nagy, Otzelberger, Henderson, and they kind of, Otzelberger was kind of, he was not involved with SDSU whatsoever. So we'll see if they like to keep it close to the vest here, which they seem like they like to do.
Will they keep it local?
They'll keep it very local, I think. Yes.
Well, I made this remark to Landon in relation to the Drake job, but it's also true about SDSU. The last 2 guys have been on the Greg McDermott tree. So do they go in that area again? I don't know who's out there. I don't know what the possibilities are, but that has become a very popular, coaching tree in this part of the country. So is there an assistant that's out there that they want to try to get? There is no Ryan Miller this time. He's going to Murray State. So I would guess that they have somebody in mind. I would be surprised if the SDSU part takes more than about 72 hours because Otzelberger, I don't remember, that was not a long search, maybe a week. And then when Otzelberger left, it was right to Hendo. It was immediate. So there was, It seems like SDSU more often than not is right on their game. The football search took about a week this earlier this year. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, somebody that's been there before, maybe a new name that people are not familiar with. And, the transfer portal's gotten a lot of talk this week. But Landon, I guess not a big surprise. SDSU, not one of their better seasons, but Henderson's gotten them to the tournament on a couple of occasions, and a good little step up to him to the Missouri Valley.
Yeah, and especially when you consider some of the money involved at some of these non-football playing Missouri Valley schools. I've seen some pretty high estimates that, like, with incentives and everything, which you never know what that all entails, but some of those, again, non-football playing schools where you have a little bit more money, presumably, to throw around at your basketball coach, that approaches 7 figures pretty quick. Mm-hmm. The base salary probably isn't, more than, what do you think?
I would bet it's $750.
I was about to say probably in the 700 range, which is 3 times what he's making now almost, probably. And
some of these incentives are basically automatic. You are going to hit them if you if you have a heartbeat. So, I think sorry, not to cut you off, but I think, it's just so interesting how Drake, of course, they aren't a scholarship football program. They have basketball as their main cow. Any NIL money they're taking in is going towards men's basketball, maybe women's basketball to a certain degree. Think of the different NIL needs. You got 3 sports essentially at SDSU where you'd want some NIL money, and football becoming what it's become, you have to sort of direct money that way as well. And it shows how far SDSU, we talk about, well, should they leave the summit at some point? Should they try to get the Missouri Valley? This is how far away you are. You're $500,000, $600,000 away in base salary for a coach. You look at some of the schools in the Missouri Valley, the Bradleys, the Drakes, the Northern Iowas. Scott Nagy, I don't remember. He's making a pretty penny now at Southern Illinois. SDSU can't pay in that that area, and not many. None of the Summit League teams can. Otherwise, they'd be in a different league.
And just to be clear, sorry, I'd maybe disparage the people of Drake. I know they have a good thing going in the Pioneer League, but when you don't have scholarships for football, I kind of just lump them in with the.
They don't win the Pioneer League every year either, so there's that. 9
years for Eric Henderson at SDSU, 3 as an assistant, and this was his 6th year at head coach. Rob Klinkenfuss has been there a while. He precedes us there, and he's the only holdover from Scott Nagy's staff a decade ago, so this would seem to be like he would be your only in-school candidate, I guess. And then I brought up Austin Hansen, because he was on Craig Smith's staff at Utah State, and who knows where he's going to go.
And I think he's been out of coaching here for a year or two. I don't know where he's been exactly. So the other name that is a Nagy-era name that I thought of, mentioned the other day, Brian Cooley, was at Colorado State with Nico Medved, over the last year. I would assume he's probably following him to Minnesota, but if he wants to be a head coach, to have that experience at Colorado State, to have previous experience at SDSU, I think that's a name that's absolutely worth keeping an eye on.
Is Craig Smith still looking for a job?
I think so.
Yeah, you do that.
That'd be funny.
If I'm being honest, you could do a lot worse than Craig Smith.
Oh, absolutely.
At SDSU.
I think Craig Smith's a real good coach. I enjoyed.
And he kind of got jobbed at Utah.
He did.
So it's not the dumbest idea. It would be funny to have a guy who's coached both in Brookings and Vermilion, but which Austin Hansen has, and it would be funny if he brought back Austin Hansen to work on his staff. But
Clint Sargent's at Wright State probably doesn't. Would he come down and be a step down? Probably.
I'm guessing he's making more money at Wright State than he would be
a step down for him. So some names from the past, and I'm sure it might be a name that we have not mentioned. So Eric Henderson headed to Drake, as well as we're on that. SDSU women, they get to the second round of the NCAA tournament. They beat Oklahoma State on Saturday, 74-68. They were down 11 there early in that third quarter. Things did not look good, but then they would go on a bit of a run, take control of that game heading into the fourth. So a really good win for SDSU. Then they play Connecticut, and that game ends up how you would think, 91-57. Brooklyn Meyer out of that game early with an ankle, and then they had 25 turnovers in the game. Played very well in the first 8 minutes, but they end up losing 91-57. So good year, 30-win year, and with their 6th tournament win. So
30 wins. That's only happened a few times in SDSU women's hoops history, and I come back to UConn is 2 or 3 levels ahead of SDSU, and
not good enough to be a 1 seed, though.
You saw it on the same court on Monday. Just, you think about, I made this point to somebody yesterday because they asked me if I went to Connecticut and if, any of that stuff, and I said no. And the SDSU, I didn't think played that bad. Even with the 20-some turnovers, it just shows how good UConn is. Paige Becker's made some incredible shots. Of course, she goes ties a career high in a game, her final home game at Gamble Pavilion. And, they're really good, and unfortunately for USC, they have the bad injury to Juju Watkins. There's a very good chance UConn, gets out of this regional that they're going to be at in Spokane this weekend, and potentially in the Final Four. It's amazing all the 11 national championships UConn has. Paige Becker does not have any. She's made the Final Four once, I believe. So this is a potentially loaded, and a driven UConn team. But SDSU, they don't have a lot to be sad about. For them to be one of the last 32 teams is a good sign. As we say every year, it's all about the matchups. It's all about where you get sent to play. I did some research on Monday just in case they pulled the upset. They've never beaten a top 25 team in front of more than 5,000 fans. Minnesota in 2008 was the most, and that was 4,500. The year they beat Syracuse in the Sweet 16 or the round of 32, there were 2,300 people there, and you're playing it in a 60,000.
That was at Syracuse.
And that was at Syracuse. So they've had 3 road wins at a top 25 program: Minnesota, Arkansas, Syracuse in the tournament. Mm-hmm. So, they have never gone to, and there's not that many places in women's college basketball that consistently draw 10, 12, 15,000 people. But, at SDSU, they would be up against it in that position. And it's a hard thing to pull off if they were ever to win those games. So I think you need to go to one of those places. Even the year they played Stanford in the second round, it was not a sellout. Stanford was not just packing the gym, and they almost did pull that off. So there has to be kind of certain things that have to line up for SDSU to make a run, and they have in the past, and I believe they will again. We have to remember, because we talked about, is there just no chance that they ever get a good seed? Last year, Gonzaga was a 4 seed. They played at Gonzaga. They played Utah in the first round. So I know Gonzaga is going to the Pac-12, I assume, for women's basketball as well as men's basketball. But to me shows that it's at least possible for a mid-major to host if they have a good enough season. And that certainly is on reputation as well, Gonzaga in the women's game.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to hang your head about. I mean, the number of teams that was beating UConn on Monday night was small. I mean, there's a reason that the ESPN analytics right now have them as the favorite to win the whole thing. And that was before Juju Watkins. I mean, I think they're one of the 3 best teams in the country. I kind of couldn't believe they didn't get a 1 seed when it was all said and done. But, I mean, they played amazing. The second most impactful player on the court didn't score until... Did she score at all? KK Arnold? I don't know. But she was really good. I mean, she came in and instantly started turning the Jacks over, and it got out of hand in a hurry.
The little thing on the bottom line on ESPN before the game said, UConn 99+% chance to win. It looked like that, and it felt like that, as the game unfolded on Monday. And they're just on a completely different level, in a few levels ahead of SDSU, and that's true of a lot of teams. I mean, how many teams are on UConn's level? Like Tennessee was, and they're not anymore. South Carolina is now. Who else would you put up there? I don't think I'd put anybody else up there. I think it's just South Carolina and UConn.
Yeah.
One thing I saw from a couple different fans on social media, fans of SDSU, that I just had to laugh at, as somebody who's followed the women's game a little bit, is they're like, I didn't know UConn played this good at defense. I just thought they scored a lot of points. I'm like,
I don't care.
You're not scoring 100 points a game unless you're turning the other team over and doing some really good things. It's like, they're really good in all phases. You figure what the worst recruit, I say that in air quotes, the worst recruit on their team is a top 30.
Yeah, is there anybody
top
they're not
50?
Is there anybody they're not recruiting in the top 25? I don't. If you're all their entire recruiting class every year probably comes out of the top 25. So, and also, this is just a general statement about SDSU fans, USD fans, anybody that lives in this area. If you don't want to sound like a country bumpkin, watch a few games that don't involve your team. Watch the women's Final Four every year, and you'll kind of get an understanding. Oh, okay, these teams are at a little different pace,
like you said, there's levels to this.
Yeah,
and
every year, people. I said this to you as well. The people that just freaked out because ESPN was calling the first round win an upset. That's what happens in the tournament. When a 10 beats a 7, it's considered an upset. You don't have to be all butthurt about it. Just understand the number where you're at. That indicates whether it's an upset or not. We understand they're both ranked in the top 25.
6.5 point favorite.
They were underdogs. Vegas had them as an underdog.
It wasn't a surprise to any of us that they won.
You can.
But it was okay.
Yeah.
They upset based on seed, based on Vegas lines, based on the way they played for the first 25 minutes of that game. It was not good.
Yeah.
And then they turned it on for a stretch there.
You're allowed to say, I saw it coming, or, wow, they should have been seated higher, but you can't cry that, well, that's not an upset. No, it is. That's how the tournament works. The team that's wearing the road jerseys in the matchup, that means they're the lower seeded team.
4 seniors, they lose.
But did they say that about Arkansas and John Calipari?
Slight upset. Paige Meyer, point guard, she wraps up her career. Brooklyn Meyer is back, and Haley Timmer back. They bring back a boatload again.
Let's just be. We think they're back.
Yeah,
the transfer portal has not hit SDSU women's basketball, but to sit here and say that it never will would be a little naive. Because at some point somebody's going to fly in and say, yeah, you know what, that Katie Vasika or whoever played really well. I'm going to throw a little money at that player and see if they'll come play in the SEC or
Creighton or wherever. It's interesting with all this stuff with college basketball, and the SDSU women are kind of immune to it. AJ's been there for, 25 years now. He hasn't left. He did leave, and he came back after a day. He hasn't left because, he could make more money elsewhere. He hasn't done that. He's been in Brookings a long time. There's nowhere else for him to go that's better than SDSU on the court. Facilities-wise, they've made upgrades the last couple of years. That's been taken care of. The only reason why you would move is because you want to make more money, or you want a chance at maybe making a run to a Sweet 16, to an Elite 8. Because there's no, you look at the regional teams, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, that region, SDSU is better than all of them, more years than not. That's why they don't play. They don't play Minnesota. They don't play Nebraska because they would lose to South Dakota State year in and year out. That's why those teams don't play.
Well, in Iowa was really popular for 1 year because of one player.
For a couple year stretch. They had a good run, and now they were 6 seeds.
They were in the tournament, and they probably will be going forward. But I agree with what you're saying in terms of what kind of product the two teams or these different programs put on the court, SDSU is just as good. And I think when you consider the opportunities that they have, Minnesota is not getting a home and home with Texas. Nebraska is not getting a home and home with Texas. South Dakota State is, and Duke. For whatever reason, they're getting those. I think because there's a mutual respect for what SDSU's got going on, and they just know that these are quality programs. I really don't know why there's a home and home with Duke, other than both sides see it as a benefit, and the fans benefit from that. There's a lot of, aside from getting a home game for the Gophers, and I'm from Minnesota, so I pay attention to the Gophers a little more than most. They got a home and home or a game in Minnesota because of Paige Beckers. Other than that, they haven't had a home non-conference game that I can think of that wasn't part of some series that's worth a darn. And so, I mean, SDSU gets those all the time, and they get Creighton. Every year they play Creighton. Every year, they play a lot of these top programs. Kansas State for a while was kind of an every year thing too.
Gonzaga,
you go down the list. I mean, there's not really, from a schedule standpoint, I think what you're saying of like, well, if I'd like to go to a team or a program that maybe get to a Final Four, okay, but like, is he going to pack up and go to Arizona State? Was just
do they want him? And do they want him?
Yeah.
I mean, he recruits here. He doesn't recruit much outside of Minnesota, South Dakota, Wisconsin area. So yeah, AJ should be back. Everybody else should be back. Transfers on the men's side, or again, we talked about the new head coach, and I mean, a lot of people have problems with all these transfers, but it's like anybody in their position would do the same thing. If you've got a chance to go somewhere, make more money now, and go to a bigger school for a bigger opportunity, I don't think there's anybody that's going to turn that down. And it's not always going to end up well. It's not always going to work out. If you're Zeke Mayo, your team didn't have a great year by Kansas standards, but I'm sure he would not pass that opportunity up again. If you asked him, would you do it again? He'd say, yeah, I would. William Cowell III, I don't know. He's in the portal, made some money this year for UCLA, really didn't get off the bench. So it's a gamble wherever you go.
I think aside from the end result of the season, Zeke Mayo to Kansas worked out about as well as he could have hoped. He got to play a lot. He was their leading scorer. That was not the plan. I think the plan was to have a couple other guys up there with him, and they didn't perform or were hurt. And yeah, it ended a little early. I think Kansas fans need to understand that they've been spoiled the last 5 years, and they happen to have one of the best coaches in college basketball, and they probably will figure it out going forward. But William Kyle III, he probably got paid as much as Mayo did, if not more. I don't know what the numbers are. The thing I come back to is, and Travis and I talked a little bit about this week, the transfer portal rankings are very interesting to watch in this case. Oscar Clough, according to On3, that was the site I was looking at, was not ranked in the top 300 last year for transfers. Now he's in the top 10, 7 or 8, depending on where you look. There's other guys, that are not on there at all. Trayson Eaglestaff is top 25. Of course, he hasn't transferred before, but just because and then you look at the guys that were in last year's top 10. There's definitely names Landon would know. And there's some guys there. It's like they're not factors right now in the postseason. So it's just kind of funny. It's just like the regular recruiting rankings. Past performance does not indicate future success.
Just a crapshoot.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the high school rankings. Who's a 4, who's a 5-star recruit, and those guys don't turn out all the time. And here's these other guys that, and Oscar Clough. I mean, where does he go? Because he is at Washington State, really didn't do much at all. Comes to South Dakota State and dominates. Best player, second best player in the whole conference.
It's going to be a 1-for-1 trade, him for JT Rock.
I was going to say, I thought that would have happened, but now that Hendo's not going to be here, maybe that's not going to happen. So
the 1-for-1 trade is null.
Iowa State is sniffing around on Clough. I would expect that to be one of the spots. So
JT Rock, Sioux Falls Lincoln graduate, leaving Iowa State after he didn't play this year, did he?
He played a little bit. He played in their game against Lipscomb. I found a photo of him.
He redshirted last year, played sparingly, I will call it, this year.
It's just interesting to see, maybe a player, if they, let's just use JT Rock as an example, that first year, maybe don't play a lot, you're willing to ride it out. Players are not staying more than 2 years. If you're not playing a lot, you're probably on the move. Mason Miller, Mike Miller's son, is transferring from Creighton. He played some. He's played some. I think he's been there for 3 years maybe. He's played some, but, I mean, wasn't in the major rotation at the end of the year, so he's transferring. It's just interesting to see the names that we kind of know or we've kind of paid attention to. They're not staying more than a year or two if they're not getting to play. So On the women's side, Landon and I have talked about Mallory Miller, the star who played at Woolsey Westington at the end of her career. She was at Arizona State, there for 2 years, coaching change. She's moving on. Like, it's just nobody's staying more than 2 years if there's a coaching change or if they're not playing.
And on the women's side, you give credit to Duke for coming to Brookings, Notre Dame a decade ago. Texas is apparently coming next year. So credit to those teams and we saw SDSU play competitively against Duke, a game they could have won. Duke's a 3 seed?
Yeah.
2 seed. 2 seed. So, yeah, I mean, they're a legitimate top 10 team, and they could, in the right environment, they can play with the top 10 team.
And they didn't play with Texas, and Texas is a top 5 team.
Yeah,
Texas
they can't play with those top 5s.
Texas is rolling right now, so that's part of the story. Let's also be honest, women's basketball, USD women, the portal, they got all kinds of stuff going on in the portal. They're a couple of their best players graduated. Carly Duffney is going to follow Kayla Carius to Green Bay, which is also where she's from, so that makes some sense. But other than that, they've got other players getting in the portal. So the USD roster is going to be.
I don't mean this is there a single player that didn't at least enter the portal?
I have no idea. Yeah, I mean, Coral Mason, I think, is still there, but yeah,
it seemed pretty hard there.
I think it's because she's from a half hour away. She's got a good, and she's kind of risen up the depth chart.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, SDSU basketball wraps up the season. We'll see. Maybe by the time Saturday comes around, we'll see what the rumor mill says for next men's coach at SDSU.
And I mean, it has not been officially announced.
I would like to throw my hat in the ring.
All right, that hat you're wearing right now.
Sure.
That the one you're going to throw in? We're all wearing hats. That's great.
We're all wearing hats. It's opening day. Yeah. Let's just put the disclaimer out there in case this doesn't happen. It falls through. It's what's happening as we're taping this. I would be stunned if he doesn't go at this point, but yeah.
What? If he does, yeah.
If Henderson doesn't go.
Yeah, the reports say
many reports saying.
Yeah.
Yes. Travis, Marcus, Landon, let's get to high school basketball. We were all in Rapid City. Brandon Valley, your champs, 53-45 over the Mitchell boys. This game went Mitchell's way for the first 2.5 quarters. Mitchell led by 2 at halftime, 21-19. And as this game is unfolding, I'm watching, I'm calling, I'm thinking, Mitchell's in a good spot here. Their defense is excellent. They're getting just enough offense. Mitchell was up 6 with 12.5 minutes to go. They got off to a good start in that second half. 6 was their largest lead. And freshman off the bench makes a couple threes, Lincoln McInerney, and they would never lead again. They lose by 8 points. And this was kind of a season for Mitchell. It was win a state title or be disappointed, basically, is what it was. And disappointed with a second-place finish, but they kind of stopped the guys they needed to, except it was Briggs Knutson, who averaged 6 points a game, and he finished with 17. He hit 5 of 11 from 3, and that's something that nobody talked about. We didn't have on the bingo card, where another unlikely hero year, 4th, 5th score down the line, has a huge night. And Brandon Valley champs, for the first time in 6 years.
Yeah, and, I think you talked about the disappointment for Mitchell. I think if they hadn't had the performances they had the first 2 days, particularly being Lincoln, it'd be a little different. But because they were kind of riding high, they'd played so well against Lincoln on Friday, you thought, well, this could happen. They could win this state title once again. And for the second time in 3 years, second time in Rapid City, they got downed by a unsung hero type performance. We had that a few years ago with Yankton. Somebody made the remark to me this week, it happened to him again. The Riken kid that you didn't see coming. And same thing here with Briggs Knutson, who's a good player. And I talked to him on the practice day, but, you look at his stats, he's a junior. He's averaging 6 points a game. You don't necessarily think he's going to be the one to sink you. And, I think I wrote it in my column, there was great irony in the fact that Mitchell went 10 for 21 on Friday and upset Lincoln. And then, in some ways, Mitchell was upset by the same shooting line from Brandon Valley. It just comes down to the other teams they played had that capability for that kind of hot shooting 3-point run. And Mitchell didn't really have that. Aside from Marcus Talley single-handedly doing it, there was not those extra shooters that could come in and, knock down a couple threes like what Brandon Valley had in this game.
Atlanta, Brandon Valley, your state champs, you watch them, they were really good against Harrisburg. To me, they're not a team that wows you. You don't look at them and say, holy buckets, look at this team roll like you would with Mitchell when they're at their peak, or Lincoln when they're rolling. They had some trouble with Jefferson in that first round. But I guess just a good, solid team. Good, their starting 5 is good to very good. it's a hard team to explain. They're just they were very solid, if not unspectacular, this year in winning the state title.
Yeah, I mean this in the nicest way possible. They're amazing at the boring stuff.
Yeah.
They're just so fundamentally sound that's why. I mean, you don't win 21 games on accident. I mean, they don't have a guy who's gonna go play D1 basketball. They have a guy who's gonna go play D1 football.
Yeah, pretty good at it.
They have some great athletes. They have guys who, I mean, can make the timely plays. And I think at the end of it, they have really smart ball players. You know, the ball feels like it's always getting to the spot where it needs to get with them, and they're getting the best look that they can every time down the floor. That's why they're maximizing what isn't like a super potent offensive punch. And then obviously, I mean, they're guarding the heck out of people. Mm-hmm. And that delivered them 21 wins. You don't, even under the best of circumstances, I mean, 2 teams got to 21 wins this season, Lincoln and Brandon. I mean, usually it's one team gets to 21 wins. And
Mitchell got to 20.
Yep.
We hear 20 wins all the time in college basketball is a great benchmark. It is really hard to do in high school basketball.
Really?
When AA, when you only have 24 games max, that's really impressive. So to your point, though, I think Mitchell kind of plays like that when Tally's not going off, and when Colton Smith and Gavin Hinker are not dunking the ball, they kind of play like that too. And I think that's what makes Mitchell and Brandon Valley an interesting matchup when they do get together. And I think it's what frustrates the other teams when Mitchell and Brandon Valley play well, which they didn't always do in every single game this year. But both these teams defend, both these teams rebound, both these teams move the ball relatively well. As always, as every basketball game from the beginning of time comes down to, it was going to come down to who made shots. Brandon Valley made a few more, and, Mitchell ended up on the wrong end of it, but, that is always a potential that could happen.
And that's exactly why a 9-0 run there in the third quarter felt like
That was it.
a 15, 20-point run. I mean, the margin for error once you give up a 9-0 run in the game to 50, it's small.
And it was short order, right? You said it was about 70 seconds?
It was 77 seconds. Yeah. They hit 3 consecutive threes, and again, Mitchell was ahead by 6, which I think was their largest lead of the game.
Yep.
They went from their largest lead of the game to they didn't lead again in 77 seconds. The game script flipped so fast that certainly there was time after the fact to react, but you went from probably feeling like, to Travis's point at the very beginning, Mitchell was probably feeling pretty decent up 6 at that juncture in the game. And effectively, no time ran off the clock, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh crap, we're down."
Yeah.
And when the game script flips that quickly, I don't know what you do.
Brandon Valley ended the game on a 29-15 run. Landon Delaney, again, he had 13 points, just 5 of 14 shooting. He had 7 assists, 5 rebounds. Mach Mayen only had 7. He was just kind of invisible out there, didn't do much, and then Knutson had 17. Looked like Gavin Hinker hurt his hand sometime there in that first half. He just had a dominant first half and then just didn't do much of anything in that second half, whether that was due to his hand injury, but that seemed like a huge, huge factor because he was dominating that first half.
Yeah, we asked him, and he gave kind of a
friendly fire.
He wasn't that weird. It was something in the locker room. It was just like, kind of a high five situation, I think, right?
And jammed his
thumb, and he didn't seem that worried about it, but it was noticeable how much less they were, going to him. So I guess read into that what you will. They had other issues. It did kind of bother me, I guess, that they weren't able to go inside, but Brandon Valley made it tough on them all game to go inside, and they knew that Mitchell was not hitting the 3-pointers. They were able to pack it in a little bit more.
They were pinching pretty tight down there. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of openings to the post.
I mean, just
especially from like if you put a corner shooter out there, that guy was cheating off quite a bit to try to close that off, even if it was the wing. They're cheating down. So
just think how many passes you saw from Mitchell, from the baseline to like 12 feet out this year, and think of how few of those there were in the title game. I mean, there just was no post-to-post passing, really. There was some post-entry from the outside to get it to those guys, but then, that's why Smith and Hinker, in a lot of ways, played so well off of each other, or other guys were able to penetrate and get it to them, and Mitchell just was not able to get any of that going in the title game because teams know very well that that's what Mitchell wants to do.
And Parker Mendel had a nice tournament where he had 8 points in those last 2 games combined. He hit some shots, and you're just looking for somebody else to hit a shot. Somebody else just to hit just 1 or 2 shots to help offensively. Marcus Talley with the classic first half performance versus Lincoln, and up with 6 3-pointers before fouling out. So a very memorable Friday night semifinal.
Yeah. Well, Friday night was, an incredible game, and I think that's, if you're a Colonel looking for the positive, memory from this tournament, it's certainly going to come from that game. Because when Talley fouls out with 1:45, everybody in the arena is kind of thinking, I think Lincoln's going to win this game, and
they're clenching their fists.
I swear, I need to go back and rewatch that second to last offensive possession, but I swear I saw some hands kind of shaking with the basketball, trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this thing? And they figured it out. They got it to Smith and then to Hinker, and he was able to get fouled and hit the fact that you had 4 for 4 free throws on 2 guys that shoot 55% was a welcome thing for Mitchell when they absolutely had to have it.
It was just kind of how those teams operate. Okay, there's a minute to go. It's a tie game. What do you do? Lincoln will shoot a 3, and Mitchell will get it inside, and they get fouled.
Well, and they made one. They tied the game, and then they took another one for the lead. Didn't make that one.
They didn't need it. They were down 2, and they took another one, and it was.
But they were true to who they were. I know that drives you nuts.
I know.
And they were 12 of 48 in 2 games against Mitchell from 3.
And then the second game, then the very next night, we're getting ready for the championship game, and they can't miss.
Yeah.
They were 17 of 33 versus Harrisburg, and it was like, well, the matchup for Mitchell just did not benefit Lincoln at all. When you get to quarter 7 and quarter 8, you're like, well, we only make 20% of these threes. So, memorable game to be the only team to beat Lincoln this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to just sort of think about what's going to stick with you about this season. And I mean, I think A1 top issue will be Marcus Talley had a pretty dang great season, and he was great in that game on Friday night as well. So,
have we said Spirit of Sioux winner yet?
Spirit of Sioux winner, that's a pretty good thing to have hanging on your.
I mean, he would have to be AA Player of the Year. I thought he would win it last year. He didn't. I would hope he wins it.
I don't think it will be
a discussion.
I think it should be squared away. We don't know the answer to that as we tape this, but yeah, I would expect that to be a
stunner.
Expect that to be the case. I'm sure we'll maybe talk in a minute about maybe the future of this team and what's going forward. So I'll save my fire for that. But I mean, Landon, what do you think? The tally and that sort of thing.
I mean, they had such high expectations to live up to, and I think that's something that Riker addressed in their welcome home on Monday. Is just like everyone expects you to hit the ground running because you only lose one starter from a year ago. When that's just not the reality. You see that in other sports, not just basketball, where it's a different process every time. You don't necessarily start all the way over from square one, but it's not, you don't pick up from game 24 and just roll it forward. And I think, when you look back on the fact that they took 2, I'm going to say relatively ugly losses early to Harrisburg, home against Huron. I mean, the rest of the season, after they kind of figured out the way they really need to play to win these games, they were almost perfect doing it. They lost a title game where it just kind of got away from them because the other team was making shots. And what was the other
Brandon
one?
Valley.
The other
voice.
Yeah, and Brandon Valley turned out to be a really tough matchup for Mitchell.
That is just it's tough. It's a team that wants to play a lot. To your point from a couple minutes ago, those two teams are in a lot of ways spitting images of each other. Yeah. Just not a lot of secrets there. Whoever can slug it out a little better.
I was disappointed that Brandon Valley got to 50 because I wanted those teams to just play in the 40s forever, like they have for the last few meetings.
That would have been awesome. It's hard to take. I mean, one of the big things that I took away from the welcome home was when you put, obviously there is a fair share of disappointment among the players and whatnot when you don't win a title, especially when that was kind of like a title or bust type situation. But when they kind of better understood the context of the 3-year run they went on, they were a little more appreciative of what they went through, because when you're only the 4th different school in AA history to go to 3 straight title games and do this, they're in some rarefied air here, and I think that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, it's interesting there, for there being essentially 40 years of Class AA basketball, there were a few kind of weird oddities. You mentioned that one. We never had the same team same two teams play for the title back-to-back years in AA, which I thought was kind of surprising.
And with
a different result. Yeah. Yes, with a different result. Yeah. All so right. That was kind of strange, to be honest. And, I think also you look at Mitchell's schedule, and I think it's always kind of interesting. You complain, Travis, every year about how, just in general, you complain, but also you complain about how it's the same every year. It's the same teams in the same order. And we know that they're going to play really good opponents in the Hoop City Classic in games 4 and 5, as it happened to be this year.
Play Harrisburg January 2nd or 3rd every year, yes.
They played an Orono team that was really good, and they beat them.
Had the Minnesota Gatorade Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Who averaged 35 points a game.
Yeah. And so, and that was an epic game, and we saw Mitchell pull that out, and I think that had people really riding high, and then they come through January and they lose a couple, and everybody's like, oh, great, But you have to remember that this is a 24-game season and how long you got to go to get through it. And I think Landon's point, they were a lot better in the second half of the season than they were in the first half, even though they had a great win in the Hoop City Classic, a couple really great wins. And I also think you did kind of see how much, even after a whole year, Gavin Sokup meant to this team a year ago. I was going to say that. They never found a replacement for him, whether it was production-wise or off the court.
He just filled a lot of gaps.
Never found that replacement. That was a huge loss.
Leader, ball handler, could play defense, could hit shots. Those are all
could
things.
Rebound
could
for
rebound.
His position,
He was their best player at the tournament last year.
Yeah.
He was their best guy. He showed up offensively in that tournament last year, and they never found that. Hinker made the biggest jump from last year to this year, and Talley and Smith were pretty similar to what they were the year before. Now you look at Colton Smith. He's the only returning starter. You have Owen Ramel and Colin Weird, who played off the bench as well.
Before we get too far into the future, I wanted to ask one thing. You had said a lot this season that you thought the two best wins in AA were Mitchell's when they beat Orono and they. So do you feel like they ended the season with the 3 best wins, or does
probably three best wins? Yeah,
because they beat Lincoln again.
Yeah.
Or does Brandon Valley have the 2 best wins because they beat Mitchell?
I would maybe back off on the Orono thing. I don't think they made the state tournament in Minnesota, but they did have the Gatorade Player of the Year?
Yeah, it was Colin Groves.
Okay, so which is incredible.
Well, they still won they won not quite 20 games.
Oh yeah, they won.
Teens.
They won a ton of games, and I should just look to before I speak inappropriately.
Yeah, Nolan Groves averaged 34.4 points a game.
I mean, I think they have probably 2 of the top 4. And Brandon Valley has the other 2 beating Mitchell. Like, those are really valuable wins now.
Mitchell was involved in the 5 best wins and losses of the year.
Yeah, and somehow. I mean, there's no way you can have that top list of wins and not have Mitchell on there now beating Lincoln twice. I mean, that's just, nobody else did that. Not very many teams even came close. And the teams that did come close were just the teams that happened to know Lincoln really, really well. And you'll remind me, who they were close against. Jefferson? Roosevelt was the one they played close, yeah. So, I mean... for whatever reason, and that's got to be frustrating as hell if you're a Lincoln coach to go, this Mitchell team that ebbed and flowed all year long is somehow the team
the boogeyman.
We just can't get past. And, next year's going to be a different animal probably, but because Lincoln's going to be really good.
Lincoln's going to bring back a lot of those guys.
Yeah,
so similar to 2 years ago where you beat Lincoln in an exciting semifinal, and you get you don't have to play Jefferson as a 1 seed. You get to play Yankton in the championship game. You're like, yes, we want Yankton. We don't want to play Jefferson. Like, we want Brandon Valley. Do you want to play Harrisburg? The way Harrisburg was playing, you probably wanted to play them more in that championship game. But again, with the matchups, was Mitchell, could they have beaten Harrisburg despite all of Harrisburg's struggles in that tournament where they played very bad? They lost 2 games by large margins. You probably wanted to play Harrisburg because you ended up losing to Brandon again. So
that was the other thing I was going to bring up before we kind of turn the page. Is the thing that's going to really stick with me is how similar these last 2 Rapid City state tournaments felt. If you're Mitchell, I mean, you beat one of your closest ESD rivals in the first round in a kind of close game to a point, but you end up winning by a relatively comfortable margin.
Either way, they were the teams you didn't really want to see in game 1.
And then you play a Sioux Falls Lincoln team that's really good, has some dynamic players. And it happened that season that Lincoln had beat Mitchell by a point in the regular season, but that was a team with JT Rock on it, Elliot Whitney. And that was a fantastic kind of instant classic type contest, similar to this one. And then you get another ESD team in the final, and a guy who necessarily wasn't the leader during the regular season for that team steps up, has a big performance, and kind of carries them to a big win. There was for me, even as just a spectator, just a really big sense of deja vu. It was kind of wild.
You've got 3 teams over the past 3 years that I'm sure feel like they should have won 2 titles. Mitchell, Brandon Valley, and Lincoln. Each of those 2 teams say, you know what? We should have 2 state titles.
And it illuminates how dang hard it is to win the whole thing. I know we spent the whole year breaking down the matchups, talking it this way and that way, and it still comes down to 3 nights in March in a row. I think it's very difficult to play these all back-to-back-to-back days. You don't do that really during the rest of the season. And
you might play like a Friday, Saturday. Right?
It's not, and you're not playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're not usually playing Saturday, Monday. I mean, there's not a lot of that. So, I agree with you. I agree that, you have these teams that are probably, feeling like we should have done better.
Then you're like Harrisburg is like, can we play Mitchell in the state tournament at some point? Why can we never get matched up with the team that they've
we saw enough in that triple overtime quarterfinal a few years ago.
That was enough for a couple state tournament matchups as it happened. And, I think also it's just the game is about matchups. I think it's sometimes a little overrated of, well, it's Class AA teams. Class AA, these teams know each other so well. Well, clearly they do, because these games do turn into rock fights. And then for whatever reason, when you get to the third place game, when the title's not on the line, then all of a sudden it opens up and stuff. But
how many threes did Lincoln hit in the third place game? 17?
That's amazing.
There's NBA teams that can't hit 17 threes in a game.
Colton Smith, Owen Rammel, Colin Weir back next year, guys that played this year. Other guys in the mix here. Owen Shelsky was a freshman this year. He's a sophomore next year. Luke LeBrun's a senior. You got Lincoln Bottom, a junior. You got Kyson Herman, a junior. We'll see who fits into what. A couple other people I'm sure that I'm not mentioning. So spots are available. You would assume that Owen Rammel gets a spot and Colin Weir would get a spot. Who's handling the ball? How much is Colton Smith handling the ball this year? Where as a freshman, he did all of his damage 5 feet from the basket, and now he does not go there. He does everything else on the perimeter. So, yeah, I mean, they should still be good. They won't go into to the year as a favorite or anything, but maybe a chance just to not have all of that pressure on you again, and maybe they can flourish, and they can maybe be under the radar here for the first couple months.
Few thoughts I have here. One being... Okay. The start of next year, they will be ranked in the top 5. We know that.
Okay.
Let's just understand that probably doesn't mean a whole lot. I think this team, if they get a home game in the Sodak 16, particularly between the 5 and the 8 seed somewhere in there, I think they should be relatively happy. If they're higher than that, that's awesome. I have a great amount of faith that Riker Kreitzfeld and this coaching staff will find and will progress players very well over the next 6 months. My question, who's going to get locked in the gym to shoot 3-pointers for the next 6 months and potentially put themselves in the position to be a trusted shooter, a catch and shooter? I'm not necessarily looking for a guy who can do it at all 3 levels, but Mitchell badly needs a couple 3-point shooters to develop, just because every other team you play probably is going to have 1 or 2, and I think Mitchell will want that. And I think this is my very amateur take. I think you want somebody else handling the ball as much as possible to let Colton Smith kind of do some of the things he does really well. So that's easier said than done. Who's getting has to wear the dribbling goggles all the time for the next 6 months. I don't know if they still use those. So they use those in high school when I was doing, keep your head up and be able to control the ball. So, those are the things I'm kind of looking to see what happens. And we write about it every year. They'll go to some team camps. They'll, put in the time. I'm sure there'll be the open gym time and the instructional time. And I'm interested to see where this team's at when we're talking next year in March.
Absolutely. I think my biggest thing is what you both hinted at is Colton Smith had to play out of position a lot this year as kind of a secondary ball handler. He's more of a 3 or a 4 naturally. A 4 in that system, I think, is safe to say. You'd like to play him alongside Hinker in the post, and he had to play on the wing probably more than you'd like him to. And Riker Kreitzfeld has spoke to that, I think, a little, at least to me. So if you can find a way to get him back in his comfort zone, or on the flip side of that, if Colton decides, hey, I'm going to put in a lot of time on the more ball handling, shooting side of things and wants to become more of a perimeter-oriented player, that's fine too. But just finding a little better fit for him because he's such a weapon. He can do so many things well that you want him to be as comfortable as possible, I think, if you're going to be in the best position to succeed.
And that is the argument to have him on the outside because he does do those things that he's a tough player to stop, really, no matter where he's at. And whatever he does next year will be of value to Mitchell, wherever they put him. And so hopefully it's just something that works out best for him and the team. And, I think he might be a player that relishes the opportunity to lead this team into next year. We saw how much he developed as a leader this season, and I'm just excited to see. Sometimes when you have this unknown, it can be a really exciting thing for the program to watch. So I think this could be a very exciting, stretch for Mitchell, even if there's some growing pains, which there will be.
KORN Sports Podcast here, Travis, Marcus, and Landon. We had another rematch. Sioux Falls Christian beat Hamlin 61-51 over in Sioux Falls. Griffin Goodberry had a good game, 32 points and 15 rebounds.
Good, yeah.
Good.
Decent.
Good for Goodberry. Hamlin, they only bring back Jackson Wadsworth, so some rebuilding there for Hamlin. Where does Griffin Goodberry fit in here for SDSU? Do you think he is an impact player, or do you think he's on the team and he really won't contribute?
Does he go to Drake?
Oof.
Anything could happen at this point. Just since we're kind of talking about it, I'm seeing now Jay Elson is the guy who's been out there on this. He's saying not a done deal now quite yet. So who knows exactly what's going to happen. This might go outdated.
Oh, no.
I think this is one of my big takes from the weekend, Travis. I said it to Landon. I think not so much Griffin Goodberry because he's obviously the Gatorade Player of the Year 2 times over. He's 6'10". You saw his athleticism on display in that win over Hamlin. So I'm pretty confident you can work him into the fold somehow. I think he will be an impact player at SDSU at some point. He doesn't necessarily have a lot of heft on the body.
No,
so
is he good enough shooter and perimeter guy to take advantage of that? Because I don't know how much.
So there's some intrigue there.
He'll be banging bodies. He's
There's
going to
also
get bigger, of course.
There's also great intrigue with Blake Elwine, 6'9", and I've been thinking about Eric Henderson, as of last week, was out in Rapid City to watch him. What is he thinking when he watches Blake Elwine? Because there's a lot of talent. He's definitely raw. You'd love to have him on your roster, but I think you're kind of sitting there like, well, how exactly am I going to use him, and what is the best skill set to use him to? And there's some of that with Goodberry as well. So I think that's why you get paid a couple $100,000 is to figure out that problem, and I don't have to worry about it. I'll just watch the games. But I think they're both very interesting college prospects.
Absolutely. I think the thing that stuck with me the most this year with Goodberry is he played a game here at the KORN Palace. I think it was for the D-Dub Classic, and he had a broken middle finger at the time, and I think it was on his right hand. I
wasn't there, so I was at gymnastics.
He had a broken finger on one of his two hands, one of the two things you need to play basketball, right? You'd argue. And he was making an impact basically with one hand. He wasn't doing quite as much dunking, two-handed dunking, but he's kind of a unicorn for what we see around here a lot. I mean, he really can shoot the ball. I mean, when he gets rolling from the outside, he's just as dangerous as he is near the rim at 6'10". So I think obviously there's a reason he's going to go D1, and you'd think that he has a pretty high ceiling when it comes to, that body type has been, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but body type's been pretty successful recently when you consider, the first name that comes to my mind is Grant Nelson. He looks a lot like Grant Nelson in terms of he's this skinny kid from Devil's Lake when he got to North Dakota State, and now he's the starting power forward for Alabama, who's one of the top 8 teams in the country.
Never underestimate the power of a college strength and conditioning program when they get their hands on some of these guys, or what?
Or a mustache.
Mustache is always powerful as well. I think what's going to be interesting is if you haven't had the chance to watch, I sent this to Landon yesterday. They put together like a 3 or 4 minute montage of all the dunks from the state tournaments, SDPB did. And you're going to see a lot of Griffin Goodberry doing just kind of dunks right by the basket because he's that tall and that good. Brant Wassenaar steals the show in that thing. Incredible athleticism. 6'5" sophomore, and I'm like, wow. So that, because I don't know how many times I saw Sioux Falls Christian this year. For sure once, maybe twice, but I did not see that as much. So that tells you Sioux Falls Christian probably not going anywhere.
Yeah. Girls tournaments had a lot of exciting, championship games and finishes, a couple upsets. Boys tournament just did not have that. Castlewood got off to a 19-3 lead there in the first 10, 12 minutes against Viborg Hurley. And Castlewood, they roll 52-31. So some one seeds and Brandon Valley wins it. So there weren't a whole lot of surprises here over the weekend on Saturday. Yes.
Hand up, hand to God.
Didn't see it coming.
The Castlewood Warriors
showed you something.
Showed me a gear that I quite frankly did not know they have. You've given me a lot of credit here the last couple of weeks playing good sound bites.
Play the clip where
I say Del Rapids St. Mary's going to win the whole thing because they didn't even make the title game. But I mean, certainly, I think we were all aware that the one seed could win the whole thing. Castlewood's been very good all year. They didn't play a close game. They dominated everybody. Am I wrong?
Correct.
Yeah. I don't have a clip.
They really showed something that I didn't quite know they had to that degree.
No. Do we have a clip for that?
We
don't have a clip.
The clip was going to be me because I think I had all three championship games. I just went.
You're an expert.
I have seen multiple Viborg Hurley games.
The
last 5 years.
The column that I thought about and I didn't write because frankly we needed content this week, but it didn't quite happen. Was you saw in all of the 6 teams that played on Saturday night in the championship. Experience. And I know sometimes experience gets overwrought. We talk about how much it matters, all that sort of thing. It's a big thing this time of year in March, but Castlewood had it last year, played in the 3rd place game, kind of knew what the state tournament was all about, came back, ran roughshod through it. Sioux Falls Christian against Hamlin, those two teams played in the championship game, knew exactly what that was going to be like. Sioux Falls Christian this year happened to be on a mission. Hamlin was just in the way. Redemption arc complete. And then you had Mitchell Brandon Valley both in that title game as well.
Redemption arc part 2.
Yeah, redemption arc is there for the Lynx. And Viborg Hurley has played a ton of big games, so it wasn't a total shocker that they got to Saturday night either. So that's the thing that stuck out to me is of the 6 finalists, they all had a lot of experience playing big games in March, big games throughout the regular season.
It's my favorite time of the year. It's, high school basketball is the favorite thing that I get to do, I guess.
You love calling the games.
Yep.
Great games.
It helps that they're good.
If
they weren't so good, I'd probably say, this ain't so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it helps that they're good. So yeah, Mitchell Colonel.
Do you like the shot clock?
Yeah, shot clock's good.
You got to wear your suit on Saturday night.
My suit, I got to buy that from Goodwill because I left all my clothes at home. So I had
he's a thrifty man.
$11.50 is what that cost.
So you had a lot of drip for just going to Goodwill.
The state tournament snuck up on you. Why did you leave your clothes at home?
I don't know. I had them hung up on hangers, and that's usually not. I usually have them in a bag.
Yeah.
I had them hung up by the coats, and I got to Kimball. I think Kimball or White Leg. I'm like, I don't got my clothes. Got enough clothes for today. Tomorrow I could get by. So hangers. The hangers did me in.
You need a garment bag.
I had a lot of hats.
Thank God.
He didn't pack the night before, clearly.
Yeah.
So that morning, that wraps up the high school basketball season.
If I haven't said it yet, I need to say it. Longest week of my life was the 4 nights I spent in Rapid City.
My God.
It's my slogan for the whole state tournament. Landon, he spent 7 days. Because state wrestling was out there. Yeah. So 7 nights out there for Landon over the last month. Blake Durham, he was there. He spent 6. So Rapid City got plenty of our money over the last
Philly Ted's did not, unfortunately.
Philly Ted's gone but not forgotten, replaced by some other store.
Get ready for next year.
We bought some books.
Yep, bought some books, bought some hats. I didn't buy anything except clothes.
Yeah.
Books and hats for you.
Hats?
Yeah, hats for you.
Hats, books.
I heard that AA girls were supposed to be in Brookings this year.
I believe that's
because of the renovations, but the renovations were done like in September.
Renovations were over. Yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know why was that? I don't know why that was that way. Who's anybody in Brookings hosting next year? They're hosting something.
B girls. Right?
So I thought, okay, then just switch, then have AA girls in Brookings this year, but you can't have that. So that is why. And I don't know why Sioux Falls or why Rapid has the boys back-to-back years either. So. Back at it next year, 2026.
And the A boys there next year at the same time. Which
so 3 of the 6 state tournaments.
Story idea is to find out how that's all going to work.
Yeah, 3 of the 6 state tournaments will be in Rapid City next year.
It's not, spoiler alert.
It's not what?
It's not going to work.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
I've never been to the ice arena. Never called the game in the ice arena.
Yeah, I just like how we've tried. There's all this complaining.
I've never watched basketball on ice. No, truly.
There's all this complaining about the formats. What should it be? and maybe I said this last week, but we've tried a lot of different stuff. We tried the combined tournament. We're going to try a couple tournaments in the same building at the same time next year. And we've kind of had, I think we've maybe done that before, and maybe Mitchell just didn't make it, and I missed it. But this is a thing where we seem like we try all these different formats, and we just need to come back to, I guess we're going to do 6 tournaments in 6 different spots. I am surprised that the Pentagon was not a girls' site last year or
that
this
needs
year.
to be more years than not. That needs to be the site for AA girls. Yeah. Sweet 16 continues tonight. There were not many upsets. There's one double-digit seed that made it past the second round. That's a 10-seed Arkansas. Hardly a Cinderella there, but I think I'm excited about the potential for this weekend because you have all these top 4 seeds hopefully playing each other, where the first two rounds were not very great, but I think we're going to make up for it here this weekend.
That's always the trade-off, right? Whenever there's a first weekend that you don't see a lot of upsets, that usually means the rest of the tournament's better, and I would bet that's going to be the case here. And usually when you have a whole bunch of upsets in the first weekend, then this weekend's not as great when you have a UW Milwaukee or something still alive in this thing. So we're not going to have that here, and I think we're going to have some really good Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four games.
My favorite game of the Sweet 16, Landon, is BYU and Alabama.
What is the over-under? Have you looked
Over-under is 176.
Yeah,
Alabama's a 5.5-point favorite. Points there. That's your first game tonight at 6 o'clock, and that is the one game I am looking forward to. And then I guess on Friday, it would be Kentucky and Tennessee. Kentucky's beaten them twice. Can Tennessee knock them off? They're a 4.5-point favorite.
And you've got Purdue, Kentucky, Tennessee, all relatively close to Indianapolis, and the 1 seed Houston is the furthest away.
Tough.
So tickets will not be easy to get. I know that's in the football stadium. They're only using half of it, but that's not a lot of fun, I don't think, for Houston.
What a weird decision.
Well, every 4 years or so, they have a regional there, and for whatever reason, they decide they weren't going to have it where the Pacers play. So, yeah, I don't get it.
And Houston, if they can get it there, they'll have it in Texas. So I guess a trade-off of kind of being a road team, but you can get that home crowd for the Final Four if you get there. Also,
when they get
there. Also, baseball season starts today, Marcus. Today is the first day of the baseball season in this country. Milwaukee plays the Yankees here at 2 o'clock. Twins are opening up in St. Louis at 3:15. You have the Dodgers and the Tigers tonight at 6 o'clock. So it sounds like Twins, similar to last year, they bring a lot back. It is not exciting at all for me. I don't know. Everybody in that AL Central can compete against the White Sox. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those 4 teams get that division title. What 3 of them made the playoffs last year? Not the Twins. So I mean, we get to watch them. I guess we'll see how the streaming thing goes. It's available. Blackouts are no longer an issue. So I guess that is good news to start the season. You can actually watch this team legally on streaming.
That is a good thing. I'm looking forward to that. Financial transactions have been made, which is a good thing. I think with the Twins, it's very interesting. Interesting being a heavy word, I guess, to carry this. They're really gambling on this team being healthier than they were last year, and that never seems like a smart strategy with the Twins. They actually are spending a little more money than they did last season in terms of payroll. That's always a hot button issue with the Twins. You have the big 3 of Lewis, Buxton, and Correa. Correa is always hurt. Is it strange that Buxton is maybe the guy you're most confident will stay healthy for the longest amount of time because Lewis is going to start the season on the IL? He also, the guy that never slumped last year. So there are questions about Royce Lewis and exactly how good and how often he's going to get to play this year. And then Correa, he just stunk during the spring. He's trying to tell us it isn't going to matter. I tend to believe him, but he's kind of getting up there in age. We need you to be a guy this year for this team. And also they're paying him a good amount of money. Everything else about the roster, I don't really know. Their defense is going to be kind of suspect. There are going to be some days, we've already talked about it, with the outfield where you're just like, who the hell are these guys that are playing some of these positions? But I am going to be able to watch it, and that is a plus. I think starting pitching-wise, they have the starting pitching. That's kind of nice for once. Or there are at least guys you semi-trust. They have what projects as the number 1 bullpen in baseball, but who really knows if that's going to happen? So, I don't know. 83.5 wins, right, is the line. I tend to think they're going to be over that because I think this division is not going to be very good.
I think it's going to be good.
You think it's going to be good? You think all these teams are going to be legit?
Except the White Sox, of course. But I like Kansas City. I like Detroit.
You don't think that Cleveland?
I think somebody's going to drop off, and it might well be the Twins.
I think it might be the Twins.
But
I like Detroit for the playoffs last year, and they rallied to get in Kansas City. They got to prove it again. They got a young team, but and everybody discounts Cleveland. I think they're projected to under 81 wins at 79, but I'm not discounting Cleveland. So I think this is probably the most balanced division, in if not top heavy, middle heavy.
Yeah,
I like that, Trav.
In that they're all around
very average to above average teams, and you have the worst team in baseball. So,
and you are not expecting anybody necessarily to go win 90 games. You would expect them to all be in the 80s.
Yeah, 80 to 90. I think you still have to win about upper 80s to win the division. Kansas City's on the come. As I like to say, Landon, how would you break down this AL Central out of young teams in Kansas City and Detroit that, are they taking that next step or are they taking a step back?
In my defense, right now, taping this podcast was the first time I thought about the order of the division, really. Because I'm just banking on the White Sox being fifth, and I don't know much else.
I'd say Cleveland and Minnesota take like half steps back, and that leaves
Detroit and Kansas City
to take half steps forward.
All right.
So they all end up right there around 85 wins, plus or minus 5.
Well, if the Twins are taking a step back, they're not going to be a factor.
That's true, because they ended up with
83, right?
Yeah, I was going to say 82.
83 and 79.
Big collapse in September. Good word to describe the Twins is...
But I mean, yes and no. If they take a half step back, I mean...
79 games.
As I say, 79 games on a... They won't be a factor maybe the last couple of weeks, but they're going to be there for a long time, because I don't think anyone's going to run away with this division this year. I think the Royals are just a little bit away.
I'm looking at this Royals starting lineup for day one. I'm not feeling it.
They just have arguably the best player in the AL.
They're still hitting Sal Perez fourth.
Yeah.
I mean, after all,
are you really going to crap on the boy Sal Perez?
The pitchers.
The man, Sal Perez.
The pitchers are nice. They got Cole Reagans going on day one.
Yeah. He was my dark horse Cy Young last year. Did well. Twins are stagnant. Yes.
Dark horse?
Dark horse. Very dark. Twins are stagnant. They haven't spent a dime for the last 2 off seasons with the sale, with this lack of local TV money.
They're in debt.
Hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. They are just as stagnant as the team could be. And they're fortunate that the roster is good enough.
I'm not trying to like crap on the Twins, but when you're like all of your best players are kind of injury prone, none of the other teams in this division have that problem.
I think any other team in this position would spend a little bit and say, okay, what do we need? What piece are we missing? Because they are a playoff team and they have been a division winner. Okay, what do we need to do to win a legitimate 5-game playoff series? What do we need to do? And what they have done is nothing. That's what they have done. They have not added anything to any part of this team. This team is the exact same team that they were 2 years ago. They've added minimal pieces. So that's frustrating to just not make any big moves. The Carlos Correa signing, just so weird.
I don't blame him at the time.
But when's the next time they're going to do that?
I don't know.
It was just a weird thing to do. Like, we're going to give this guy $200 million for 1 year, and then we're going to sign him again because the Mets don't want him and the Giants don't want him. So we're going to bring him back on a longer term 4 or 5 year deal. It's like, you've never done this before, and why is this the guy that because he's won a World Series?
And because he already played for you.
It's very weird.
And he was just sitting there waiting. So that's why they did it.
It was very weird because their top prospect, Royce Lewis, played shortstop. And now you have bungled his career by putting him in center, where he proceeded to tear his ACL in a week by hitting the wall, cost him a year. Now you're jacking him around, putting him at third. Jose Miranda's at third. I don't know, or Royce Lewis, I don't know where he plays at. They just...
Designated hitter.
They could screw up a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, well, he was kind of a crybaby about the third base thing, though.
But I would be. It's okay. I'm a shortstop. I'm not ever going to get to play shortstop because Badfoot Correa's out here hobbling around.
Then trade Correa.
That's what I would trade. I'd trade everybody. I'd trade the whole bunch. Trade the whole bunch. If you're worried about money, trade the whole bunch. So any World Series predictions, any hot takes from this group? I like Paul Skeens to win MVP. How about that? MVP. Shaking your head. I like him to win the whole damn thing.
Well, how many wins are the Pirates going to have?
75.
I don't know if the
And he has 20 of
I don't
them?
know if the MVP's going to
It's going to be a weak year MVP-wise.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously not likely to happen, but I like him for
What
Cy
are the
Young.
odds?
Probably very high. I think I probably get odds.
You could probably get them.
I don't like the Dodgers. I'll never pick the Dodgers to get there.
Yeah. What's your Dodgers pick and your non-Dodgers pick?
I'm not. I'm just not, because last year they finally won a World Series in a full year, and it was looking bleak because they were down to 3 starting pitchers. They were down, I believe, 2-1 to the Padres in the first round. Like, it wasn't looking real hot for the Dodgers, but I'm not going to pick them. I don't. Obviously they could. They're everybody's favorite, but I will not pick the Dodgers. So I mean, there's a lot of teams you could go with. Yankees get back for the first time in a long time, but I think there's a lot of teams that have a legitimate shot this year.
I'm looking to see if this has ever been a World Series matchup. I thought it maybe had been. Not seeing it, so I'm going to predict it. They played back-to-back years in the World Series, but not against each other. You're wearing the Peas hat there, the Phillies.
Yep.
Phillies against the Orioles. People
wow.
like the Orioles, right?
83, yeah.
Yeah.
Orioles. Yeah.
Oh, there was that. They did play in the World Series
in 83,
yeah. I was looking at 80 and 81. Or 79 and 80, I should say.
I wish you'd have let me go first.
Your takes there, folks. What do you like?
I liked the Orioles.
The pitching. They have not addressed the pitching. The pitching is just.
And they moved the wall again in left field.
Christ.
They just can't
They
help
moved it in again or back again?
I don't even know. I think they moved it back. They just can't help themselves. They got to move it every year. They just, yeah.
This Oriole team, all these prospects and all these young hitters, the pitching concerns me. They just don't have it. They have not.
Yeah, I just picked it because it's something different. So
you like the Orioles as well?
Landon? Now I don't.
No, you don't?
I don't.
Okay, fine.
I don't like.
I'll amend it. Kansas City, because I just hated on them. Kansas City against Milwaukee. Kansas City.
Oh boy, what a series that'd be!
I get to take the Orioles now.
Good. Orioles.
They're going to play the Dodgers.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Dodgers aren't going to make it, and if the Dodgers aren't the NL representative, it's going to be the Dodgers. Yeah.
Right.
It's the only team that's.
I picked Kansas City because I have always liked Kansas City.
Good.
You know this. And
I've come around. I didn't like them 10 years ago. I've come around to this
the
bunch.
Food's good. In the parking lot,
Yep. Big old parking lot.
And then I just picked the Brewers just to make him happy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because he says I never do anything nice for him. So.
He picks on me a lot. That's
and some of it you deserve.
Hey, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I like just a little.
I have not decided yet. I'll decide in the next 10 seconds here.
Yeah.
I like Atlanta to get back. I like Atlanta to get back. They had injuries last year. I like Atlanta to get back to the World Series. I like maybe Texas. I like Texas, Atlanta, maybe. Obviously, Houston. It's always Houston. But maybe Texas, Atlanta.
What about the Mets? They spent a lot of money.
Mets were interesting because they're this $300 million team that seemed like an underdog. They were like this underdog story that had the highest payroll in baseball.
That still had a few holes.
Because they had a bad start and then they got hot and they were really good.
And Grimace. They had Grimace.
That was great. So that was interesting. The Mets to be this scrappy underdog $300 million payroll team. It's like you look at this team. It's like, how did you spend $300 million on these guys? Because they're not
that special.
Like 3 good guys on this team. So.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that if it's not the Dodgers, it's the Padres for me.
Padres, all right.
The old dads.
What do you think about the A's?
Well, I'm looking on the I'm looking on the MLB app.
I really want to pick them to make the playoffs.
They're supposed to play at Seattle. They don't even have the logo for the A's. As far as I know, the A's did not change their logo of the team.
Why are we having so much difficulty here calling them the Sacramento Athletics?
The thing, it says ATH against C.
This isn't the Utah Hockey Club.
Just call them Oakland. Call them Sacramento. I don't care. They're not in Vegas yet.
I don't know why this is so difficult.
Doesn't have to be this hard.
No. So I'm excited about baseball. So we'll go Texas, Atlanta.
You're always excited.
I'm always excited. I had my drafts on Sundays. I was excited about that.
I'll be excited about baseball for the next couple of. I'll be excited until the Brewers get clubbed by the Yankees today.
And get excited October 12th.
Good
and then I'll be excited again around the All-Star break, and then I'll be excited again in October.
I do regret to inform you that there's only 9 games tomorrow again because a lot of these teams are off, for the opening day thing. So
I need to schedule all sports. We're scheduling all. Weather should be all right today, so that should.
And then the Twins go to Chicago, huh?
Yeah, that's where you want to go in, April 1st.
I'm just glad that the powers that be decided to put the Brewers game early in the day so that I can enjoy the Sweet 16 this evening.
Thank you for that. Any
Thank
final
you.
thoughts? Wrapping up basketball season, and it doesn't end. Picking it up right into baseball.
Yeah, there'll be a
NFL
lot of
draft next week.
There'll be a lot of track.
Next month.
There'll be a lot of track. I was like, is there something you...
Nobody's telling us.
Yeah. A lot of track and field.
Baseball,
There'll be
softball.
some baseball, some softball. Golf does not get going really, but the courses are open. Have you played yet?
Not played.
No.
Didn't play a lot last year, no.
I haven't either. So, yeah, we just chug along. If you got story ideas, let me know because I'm looking for them.
All right.
So
That's Traxler at MitchellRepublic.com.
Yep, send me your best, send me your worst. And Mitchell Republic Players of the Year, next 2 weeks, we'll have those out. Landon's working on a couple, so that's happening. That's a good thing. What were you going to say?
I could guess them, I think.
I think you could guess them.
But we can't confirm nor deny.
Okay.
Yeah, the authenticity we can't speak to.
Also, pickleball. Any pickleball updates?
The
dirt has been moved.
Have been the ground has been broken.
Yeah, they broke it.
And so I guess by the end of August, they're saying they think they'll have them done, which is earlier than I was expecting. And
give you a couple months to play there if they get it done August,
that'd
early
be nice.
September.
There will be lights, so
Good
that's
job.
good. So as an on and off player, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm closer to my mid 30s than my lower 30s, so now it's like, well, I got to watch that Achilles.
Oh, the
pickleball.
Achilles.
You got to be careful.
Right.
So,
the elbow.
The elbow, all pickleball elbow.
A lot of these
too.
guys have elbow problems.
Tommy John.
Yeah, him too. For Landon, for Marcus,
He doesn't have anything else to say.
I'm Travis. Thanks you for listening to the KORN Sports Podcast. Again, you can find us.
We need a name.
We know ball.
We need to develop a name.
We'll come up on with the summer here. Our first batch of shows. Again, you can find us on Spotify and on iTunes.